So anyways, thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming out. This is a great crowd. I really hope that we can, really walk away from this with some understanding about how different people think about the same goals in charity and volunteering. Thank you for coming out to the first Interfaith discussion, charity event. Hopefully, FACT is really wanting to work with Humanism with Heart and do this every year. Maybe get people that are more famous. I'm just saying. No, I'm joking. Some real notables. No. I'm a comedian at heart. I'm still working on this.
Keep working. Keep working.
Of course. So now we are going to beef. No. I may win this one. No.
Good luck.
I want to thank each of the members of the panel who have agreed to come together to discuss these topics and hopefully entertain everyone tonight. Obviously, we're getting off to a good start. I want to thank especially David Silverman, President of American Atheist, Reverend... He has fans. Reverend Lisa Romantum Schwartz, did I say that right? Yes. Of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Winston-Salem. Dr. Gail Breton, Director of Jewish Life at Wake Forest University. Ibrahim Thompson, Outreach Director of the Noor Islamic Center of Clemens. Reverend Kelly Carpenter of Green Street Methodist Church. And last but not least, Reverend Craig Schaub of Parkway United Church of Christ. Tonight we're here to raise money for Brenner's Children's Hospital. All the funds that are being used in this, that are being donated tonight will go to that awesome charity. They have been very gracious to allow something like this to be attached to their name, and that's awesome. A lot of places, when they hear things about secular or atheism or David Silverman, they don't want to be associated with that. I don't know why. He's awesome. He's a big sweetheart. Why did everybody laugh? I was serious.
Why did you laugh?
Oh, this crowd. My phone is acting up. Stop that. So I'm completely professional here, everybody. I just need y'all to understand that. My phone, however, has an attitude, and I've been working on it, but it doesn't appreciate anything I do for it. So anyways, so one of the biggest problems that we see between theists and non-theists and people of different worldviews is the problem of the narrative. The narrative has been that because we believe differently that the other person is wrong, that narrative of wrong and right is a divisive narrative by its own nature. What we should be doing is fostering and founding a new narrative in which we build cohesiveness and inclusiveness. We are all humans, we are all part of a beautiful world, and we must strive to work together to make it a better place. Not because of a theistic hope for a better afterlife, nor for the atheistic view of nothing else is out there, but because we have a responsibility to our children and their children to be able to leave them with a better world than what we have. The only way that we can do that is by learning the ways that we can work together, regardless of our worldview. It should not be about black or white, or atheist or Christian, or Jewish or Muslim, but about all of us working together to learn about each other, to learn how to respect one another's personal viewpoints, and to find ways to cooperate for the betterment of all. Tonight, we will begin that discussion. We will open up the conversation. We will explore the disagreements, which is what this is about. The only way to understand how we can work together is to first air the disagreements that we have with each other. And the only way we can do that is by discussing them and having honest discourse with respect shared between all. That's why this is a moderation panel discussion and not a debate between a theist and a non-theist, or a Christian and a Muslim, or a humanist versus a Jewish person. It's a panel of all of them working together to air out their disagreements and air out why they feel they are right and why they feel they have the best worldview. Once we get that out of the way, once we learn about each other and where we do agree, from that disagreement, we will build a better way of understanding. So this is a first step in that path. So I want to thank everybody for coming out. And the way this is going to work is I will ask a question. Each member of the panel, starting with Ibrahim and working our way around, will get a chance to answer that question. And then we will have a short back and forth between them. As the conversation goes, we will, see how it flows, and as long as it's flowing good, I'll let it go. But once we start kind of ebbing and flowing, we'll start asking the next question. All right, first, Ibrahim, starting with you, can you please define your worldview and why you think it is the most valid? This is your introduction, by the way.
Me as a Muslim, and that's the question that you asked.
Mm-hmm.
As a Muslim, it's a religion of peace. I know we see a lot of things today that makes people think otherwise from all the things, and we as Muslims, we abhor these things. We love people, we love everyone. We believe that everybody has a right to be able to be in a religion as they please, and we accept that. I accept that. I was born and raised to that. I'm a second-generation American. My family's from Cote d'Ivoire. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, Chicago Cubs, but I also like the White Sox. I also like the Bears.
Bears.
And I love my Al's roast beef. I love that as well. But one of the things I've learned throughout my travels in life is being around so many different cultures, I've learned to respect everyone. And that was one of the values that my mother and father had taught me, is to be able to understand, learn, and respect everyone, irregardless of what they believe or what. As a Muslim, that is one of the values that I've been taught throughout my life. And this is what's so painful to see, how you have a few who make the religion look bad. They do things for their own gain, and it hurts the entire religion. A lot of these things that we see is something that have never been read in my life. And I just want everybody to know that, a little bit about me, that, and about the religion, that a lot of the stuff that you see, these individuals are not Muslims. They're not. There's only one place they're going to go, and there's many stories beneath the surface of the earth where it's quite hot, and that's where they will remain.
Good evening. I'm Kelly, and I guess I would describe myself as a progressive evangelical. I think more accurately, and I have been called this, I'm probably what some might call a religious humanist with a Calvinist bent and a Wesleyan hope. My parents grew up Nazarene and very much steeped in a very fundamentalist tradition. And my father jumped ship when he was in seminary and became a Methodist. And one of the stories about him was that his best friend, when my father retired from the ministry, they said, when Don was in the ministry, he was so very conservative, and I was so very liberal, and over time, he just kept moving to the left, and I kept moving to the right, and we passed each other somewhere in the night. And he goes, I'm just glad that Don is retiring before he leaves the faith. All that to say is that, I had a very rich and a very nurturing experience in the Christian faith. But I had one that really I don't have a fundamentalist bone in my body. And so part of that, my upbringing with that is a really sense of respect for a real difference. And so a lot of my work has really been around working in multicultural areas and also in interfaith dialogue. I'm a big fan of that and seeking some understanding with that.
Once again, my name is Craig, and I serve with the congregation here of the United Church of Christ, which is a pretty small denomination. Yeah, we talk of ourselves as being united and uniting, really trying to find common ground with people of lots of different faith traditions and humanist and moral understandings. We had a kind of discussion this afternoon with a group of students about the United Church of Christ, and as we were describing it, somebody said, well, it sounds a little bit like a sampler platter, that you kind of take a little bit from a lot of different traditions. In fact, our denomination is a young denomination that draws from 4 different traditions. What I'm really committed to, like the 2 gentlemen to my right, is interfaith relationships and dialogue, finding a space where we can work together for the common good. One of the jokes of the United Church of Christ is that the UCC actually stands for Unitarians Considering Christ. So Lisa and I have some good conversations. I think I'll stop there.
Hi everybody, I'm David Silverman. I'm here representing the fastest growing religious demographic in all 50 states. So atheism is real simple. Here's the way it works. We have, as a society, as a species, a set of things that we know to be true. We have a set of facts that we know to be real. I am the only person standing up here, sitting up here, whose views completely and 100% agree with everything we know. There's no man in the sky, everybody dies, and all religion is individual. Everybody is a cafeteria religion. Every religious person is a cafeteria religious person, which is why Ibrahim will be completely behind the statement that the bad people are not Muslims, but those same bad people will say the exact same thing about Ibrahim. And that's because it's all individual. They will look at you and they will say, you are the one who's not a real Muslim. We don't do that. Atheism is the absence of a belief in any of that. We deal with reality, the laws of physics and mathematics as we understand them that govern and guide the universe. This is why, and in the past ever, the number of times that atheism has been proven wrong is 0.
Yes.
0. And I want to make sure that I make that statement clearer. If you took all of the miracles, all of the proof, all of the testimony, all of the signs from all of the religions in the history of the world, all of the ones that have been scientifically proven and backable, all of the scientifically backed miracles and everything, and put it all into one place for all of the religions in the history of the world, you'd have nothing at all. 100% of the gods, 100% of the miracles are not real. They're all hype. If I am proven wrong on that statement once, ever, I will convert and quit my job. And that's where we begin.
I'm Lisa Schwartz, and I have to start out by vehemently disagreeing with David Silverman, because Unitarian Universalists don't have a kind of a man in the sky or even a woman in the sky or that kind of supernaturally based view of the world. So when Shane asks, why do you have the best worldview? I would say, I don't have the best worldview. I think I have the best worldview for me. I describe myself as an agnostic. That doesn't mean I just can't make up my mind. It really literally means I don't have enough information, and I don't know that it's humanly possible to have enough information to totally decide whether some metaphysical or philosophical statements are based in truth. So some people think agnostics are those people who knock on your door with nothing particular to say. But I like to think that we're people who are comfortable with ambiguity. We don't mind having some big questions that will remain unanswered and unanswerable for us. So Unitarian Universalists believe in that the scientific method is the way to seek truth about the world, and we believe that there is a depth perception or depth dimension to human life, And whether it's through art and poetry or other kinds of expressive means, we have to delve into those non-linear kind of areas as well.
So you know you're an atheist, right?
This is going to be fun. I'm Gail, and I was born Jewish, but in a lot of places I lived, we were the only Jewish family. So when we lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we were the only Jewish family, and our neighbors always invited us to trim the Christmas tree and do the Easter eggs, and they invited me every summer to Christian Bible school, to which I went, and had a really wonderful time. My parents are very liberal, and we belonged to different synagogues based on where we lived, who the rabbi was, and all that. So I'm comfortable in Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, Reconstruction, Humanist, and all of that. And my children are now in college, and when they were growing up, we belonged to more than one synagogue wherever we belonged, because I never wanted my kids to say, my Jewish religion's better than your Jewish religion. I taught them that also about Christianity, that we, as far as I'm concerned, God made all these religions, and there are different ways for us to reach out and meet God. The beauty, for me, of Judaism is that Judaism is always open to interpretation. So you will have, as we like to say, you get 3 Jews together, you have 5 different opinions. So that's, for me, opens up a whole broadening of the world. So I feel that I'm able to talk about different viewpoints from different religious Jewish backgrounds, as well as some Christians, and Muslim as well, because I like to study, I like to learn about different religions, because I find that that in many ways deepens my belief, and my belief in people.
Thank you. Please give him a round of applause, please. That was a surprise question, thus the reason Ibrahim was confused. I did that on purpose. I kind of want to put him on the spot. I didn't want them preparing, just blanket statements about who they are and what they are. I wanted it really off the cuff. So blame me. That's my fault. I'm like that. All right. So, does anybody want to respond to anything that was said? Okay, go for it.
I just want to respond to David as well. I think many of us
This is going to happen a lot, folks.
I think many of us are characterized as theists. I would not be able to claim that title for myself either. I don't submit to a notion of a big man on a heavenly throne either. I feel like sacred energy is woven through the material order that we experience all of the time, and so theist wouldn't work for me.
So, okay, so let me ask you the question I ask other people. Do you think there is a living, thinking being that is above and beyond the laws of physics and mathematics that govern the universe? Do you think there is one?
I would respond to that by saying, I believe that there is some force that is relational.
Is it supernatural?
I don't know how to define the word supernatural, but I would
Outside the
say,
laws of physics and mathematics, whether we understand them or not, that govern this universe.
I would say I have a sense, I've made a decision to posture my life in a way that I feel like there is something beyond me and what I see.
So there are 3 atheists up here. The good news is you're right. And I like that. This is something that I've been noticing, that a lot of pastors, specifically in the UCC and in the Unitarian side, are becoming outed atheists. And you did just tell me that you were an atheist. You may not have used the word, but you did. And that's okay, because you're right. It's safe here. No, that's fine.
Well, let me ask you a question about
Yeah.
that, because, you know, I have a perspective that's similar to Craig's.
You do?
Yeah, I do. Do you have, would you call,
Ibrahim, do you believe in God?
sometimes, on Sundays, no, yeah, so, David, would you define, would you define an energy that is somehow, that is non-material in the world, that is a sacred energy? Would you call that that?
You're not using words I use.
Okay.
The words,
I wouldn't use words.
because you use the word
about
sacred,
yeah.
and sacred's not a good word to describe. So,
Well, not if you're an atheist, right?
right. So the word that I use is supernatural, okay, which is above and beyond the laws of physics that govern the universe, whether we know them or not.
Well, would you use the word transcendent?
That's too vague as well. Transcendent can have a secular meaning. I'm talking about supernatural.
Okay.
Now watch. I'm going to do something. Now watch. Ibrahim, do you believe in a supernatural deity? A thinking supernatural deity that's outside the laws of physics and mathematics that govern this universe?
I've never met him.
Do you believe he's there? Do you think he's there?
I believe, this is what I believe. This is a very, very good question. My brother and
Ibrahim,
sister-
it's a simple question.
This
It's
is-
a yes
this
or
is-
no question. And I haven't got any yes or no questions.
I can't do that.
Yes, you can. Do you think he's there?
I believe that there is someone who guides us and guides me every day with the good things that I do. And I believe
A supernatural
that
person.
there is someone there.
Supernatural.
I don't see him, I may never see him, but I believe.
But he's supernatural.
Why would it have to be supernatural? Why couldn't
Because
it
if
be-
he's not supernatural, he's not a god. And this is why you guys are all dancing around the word. If he's not supernatural, he's not a deity. And you're all atheists, and you're all right.
I appreciate that, but
Hold on a second.
but I don't agree with that, because I do think
This
that,
was not a debate.
It is.
but it's a discussion.
It is a discussion. It is a discussion, and it's a healthy discussion. Now, when we're saying a supernatural entity, when you describe an energy source that is outside the parameters of what we can measure, then you are saying it's a supernatural force because we aren't able to measure it. We're not able to scientifically, test its parameters and what it is able to do within its completeness.
I would say that's true, but I think also the characterization that David gave was that it governs. Is that what you said?
No,
What was
no. I don't give the governance. I say exist. Okay?
Yeah, okay.
It does a being exist that is supernatural. Do
Okay,
you
well,
think there
I
is?
think one of the things that we're kind of skirting around is that, and the reason why we have trouble with the religions that we do is that we have different vocabularies. And we are not defining things the exact same way.
Right.
But what I'd like to ask you, David, is, have you ever had a coincidence in your life? Have you ever thought about somebody and then the phone rings? How do you explain that?
They're called coincidences. They happen. They happen. Coincidences happen, and we perceive them as coincidences. That doesn't mean there's an invisible man in the sky making it happen. It's a coincidence. It happens. That's real. A man in the sky making me psychically get a phone, think of who's on the phone before it rings, that's not real. If it were real, it would be testable. But there is no evidence to suggest that that's true. What all the evidence, without exception, suggests is that coincidence is very real, and there's nothing divine about it at all. And there's nothing supernatural about it at all. And I do push back on you, because the definition of a God is supernatural in nature. We can say, well, my God is love, God is all of us, and God is the universe. Those are metaphors that atheists use, okay? If you think God is a metaphor, God is love, God is a universe, God is all of us, God is the human potential, you're an atheist because you don't believe in God. You believe in something else that you're calling a God. A God is supernatural.
Well, let me push back on that. The supernatural word is not one that I use either, and one of the reasons why is because when I think of God, I'm thinking of God in and around and being and all through all of nature itself. To me, with the word supernatural almost says that God is against nature on some level or separate. I do think of God as being transcendent. So somehow separate.
Alive?
Yeah.
Thinking?
I think intelligent, yeah.
Okay.
I think that, yeah.
An intelligent, transcendent life form that is or is not bound by the laws of physics in this universe.
I would say yes.
I asked is
I would
or
say
is not.
not bound.
Okay, so that's a theist.
Right.
See, that's theist.
Okay.
Okay, that's a God.
Thank you.
That's where I was going. That's where I was going. See, we're communicating. We're using the same language now.
Yay!
And
You're an atheist, aren't you?
That's what we're going for. There are going to be some aspects of this that is going to be a debate because that's how a discussion happens. It's back and forth. And it's a discussion about things we disagree on and that we're passionate about. So if you came here and you thought that this was going to be a lovey-dovey, hey, everybody's going to get along. No, David Silverman is here. I mean, seriously, did y'all not realize that? I mean, I made it in big letters. This is a discussion to figure out how we define ourselves as atheists or agnostics or humanists. This is how we figure that out. Because we have to define the things so that we're all on the same page. That's why we're talking about what we disagree about. So that we're understanding where we disagree. And then in the next conversations that we have, we talk about the things that we agree on. Where can we make this work between us? Can we work together at all? Or are we so fundamentally wrong in each other's eyes that we can't work at all? We are starting the conversation here. And we're starting it with why we disagree. If you don't like that, I'm not a nice person as far as that's concerned. This is what we're doing now. We are starting that conversation now.
Right, and I have no problem because in the Jewish tradition there's a thing called chevruta. You may think of it when you watch the movie Yentl and you see in the yeshiva they're arguing over a word and they're yelling at each other and this is the meaning, no, this is the meaning, no, this is... So in my Jewish tradition...
It's the way you pray, right?
Right, I'm totally undefended because I like this. I like to hear what people are saying, and we don't have to agree, but we can agree to be quasi-agreeable and to meet each other in this moment and broaden our perspective.
I apologize for cutting you off, Greg. Go ahead with what you said. Okay, good. All right, so we're going to move on to the next question. All right, so where does altruism come from? What causes humans to help one another, doing donations, charities, the guy on the street that you see that needs a few coins? What makes you stop and hand him some money or take him to go get a dinner or something like that? Ibrahim?
One of the things as a Muslim that we learn is being charitable. We do it in many, many ways. You hear of Ramadan, when we do the 30-day fast, when you're hungry and can't have anything to eat or drink all day. But part of that, beside the prayer and everything that we do, it is to help one another, to take away for ourselves, to help others who are unable to have food on their table. In Islam, we learn to be able to help people who are less fortunate than we are, no matter who we are. If we can't do one thing, do something to help someone. And that's what I've learned from all my life as a child, to be able to work with people and help those who are less fortunate than yourself. And by giving, it's just helping you be a positive person on what you're doing. Someone asks for $1 and you have it, I give it to them. If I have something that maybe I can't use, maybe someone else can use that. That's what we're taught in Islam. I wrote some things down to answer that, which gives a little bit more detail, because actually I put this together last night. Charity, for which expression used in the Holy Quran, is spending out of what God has given you. Meaning using your energy, talent, resources, money, possessions, or whatever else to help and do good to those in need. In Islam, charity is often mentioned alongside prayer because just as the latter is man's relation with God, or man's duty towards God, the former, charity, represents his relations with his fellow human beings and indeed with all of the creation of God. Prayer expresses just the love for God, submissions to him, and a desire to bring out the divine qualities that lie hidden in every person. Charity is an expression of sympathy and benevolence towards God's creation, putting into actual practice the lessons you learn in prayer. Being charitable is very strongly urged upon us Muslims, so much so that the Holy Prophet has said that on every limb of the body, doing a charitable deed is due every day, whether it is in the hands, feet, or tongue. There is no person at all who cannot do a deed of charity to others. According to the prophet, if someone has nothing to give, he should work and earn, and give out of that. If he still does not have anything to give, he should help someone in distress. And if he is unable for some reason to do even that, he should try to do good as he can and refrain from doing any harm to anyone. That's one of the tenets I was brought up with all my life, and this is why I do what I can to help people. It's a faith-based driven thing for me to do it, and I believe that.
I think I never use the word altruism, so I do use the word compassion, and which means a little more to me. This is where I become more of a Calvinist, especially when it comes to human nature, because I'm not really very impressed with human beings' ability to be compassionate with each other. We've done such a poor job of that, and I do think that this is, a primary failing of our own religious traditions, where we have failed to help people see that. My own perspective on that, outside of the faith tradition about human nature, is that my psychologist wife reminds me of, is that human beings have the inborn capacity to empathize, to feel another person's pain, but it has to be taught, it has to be demonstrated, it has to be shown, it is latent. That is a real problem when a child has not been demonstrated to a child how to be compassionate, how to be empathetic towards others. Then oftentimes they are not receiving that and don't know that. So I think that altruism is something that is taught and it's passed on. I do think that it's definitely a huge part of my own Christian tradition. Again, we're the worst perpetrators of lack of altruism and a lack of care for one another. But for me, the piece of my own tradition about that is when Jesus identifies his presence amid the poor and the suffering, and says, where you find the hungry, the homeless, the prisoner, the hurting, the wounded, the thirsty, the naked, there I will be also. That is a call for us if we are serious about being in somehow a relationship to the divine and relationship to God. Then we have to be involved with that. And if we're not, I think we shouldn't be calling ourselves followers of Christ, followers of Jesus.
Altruism is a very difficult word for me as well. I think it's a word that was concocted by one of those dead white continentalist philosophers. In response, I believe, to Thomas Aquinas, who said that it's more important to love God than it is to love your neighbor. And in that way, I would agree with that argument, because I don't believe that's true. But I also, if you lay out the word, I think it means selflessness, and that to me is just plain dangerous. That I can't be in relationship with somebody who is at least fronting as a selfless person, because I don't know where they stand on anything. And so I'm more interested in words like empathy and companionship, solidarity. I do think that as people are taught and begin to get into a practice of empathy, that it is a biological thing that we experience, that some of our nerve synapses start firing, that there is something very positive that we experience. But the danger comes in, sometimes we think we're helping someone when in fact we're taking away their dignity, or we're giving them something that we think that they want that they really don't need. So an attempt to suffer with, stand with, weep with, be with, that's a whole nother matter that I think is core to my tradition.
So you're right, it's definitely biological. Compassion and empathy has evolved into us. We are a social animal. We see empathy in very young toddlers, and more tellingly, we see empathy in other animals. We see empathy in chimps, we see empathy in mammals, in dolphins. The bonobo chimps are very empathetic, caring creatures. One of the things that, and you're going to hear about, when we talk about empathy, we talk about altruism. You got 6 good people up here, okay? 7 good people up here talking. Okay, and we're all talking about the same thing. Here's the point that I want to make. Yes, we're all going to talk in favor of altruism because we're all good people. But altruism doesn't come from religion. Altruism and empathy come from biology. Religion, most religions, all teach empathy because they all try to take credit for the advent of empathy. Ibrahim says that it's part of his faith that he's good. He gives credit to his faith. I'm just picking on you a bit. He gives credit to he gives credit to his faith for something that is in his brain, something that was evolved in. This is what religion does. It takes credit, and you did it too. It takes credit where it's not due. The reason, oh, you're a good person. Well, the reason you're a good person is because you're of this religion. You're welcome. Here's a collection plate.
I didn't do that, but okay.
Yeah. My point is, my point is, I'm not trying to make any blanket, well, I'm trying to make one big blanket statement.
No, you did make a blanket statement, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. My point is that religion likes to take credit where it's not due. And this question kind of betrays that, or kind of shows that, because we're all good people, and the one thing that we have in common is not our religion, it's our humanity.
Let me just say, Shane, I hope you start on this side of the room because this guy keeps stealing my thunder.
That's
I'll do that
again.
next.
You're right.
Thank you. I believe in the inherent goodness of people, so I think it's an interesting and probably a helpful distinction, really, to make between Unitarians and other progressive liberal faiths, is that we don't really find the need for a redeemer because our sense of humanity is really very high. We would, most of us, I think, say that empathy and compassion are part of evolutionary biology. As David said, at least other primates and probably other mammals are widely demonstrated to be empathic. And I think that it's an important part of the success of Homo sapiens, that they were able to form communities and act, if not altruistically, then certainly putting aside their own individual needs on behalf of the larger community is part of how we became human beings. And so there you have it. We agree again.
Rock and roll.
Start over here.
Look at how right you are. Rock and roll.
When I was going for my doctorate, at the beginning of the process, I wanted to do my dissertation on freedom fighters and find out why people would give up their lives for the other. And so my dissertation chair said I should look into altruism and find out everything that I could. And what I found was a lot of what we're saying up here, the biology, that we're hardwired for it, that a lot of times when we're helpful, we get our endorphin flow, we feel really good. But then also, there's a learned, is it nature or nurture? Well, in a way, it's both. So then I decided that I would go back to my Jewish tradition and find out, we don't use the word altruism, we use the word compassion, rachamim, and it started talking about the Passover Seder. And at the Passover Seder, we retell the story of the Exodus, of leaving Egypt where we were slaves, and how we are not supposed to enslave other people, how we're supposed to care for other people and never let that happen to anybody again. And so it's the combination of the hardwire, but it's the combination of the learning, and that it's not just enough to feel compassion. It's not just enough to learn it. You also have to do something about it. And so the tradition is, when you see something happening, yes, you can feel for somebody, but you should do something as well.
Yeah, comments are going back and forth now.
I have a question for Lisa, because I'm curious about this too, I'm not clear about this. Like I said, I get schizophrenic on this. I go back and forth on it. Sometimes I'm a humanist, sometimes I'm a Calvinist. So. I am as impressed with the human capacity for evil as I am for our capacity for compassion. And not in a good way. I mean, I'm just, I think that when I have to explain that as well. And much of that, I think, also comes from part of our natural being as well. So when I hear about human beings are naturally good, that I balk at that. I also balk at the other too, that we're all bad. I'm not there either. So I wrestle with that. How do you respond to something like that? When you think about human capacity, I mean, thinking about Nazism and how what was done in the name of religion, and even in whatever, in the sense of humanity, our capacity to perpetrate the Holocaust, overwhelms me, and I have to try to figure out what that means for us as in our human nature.
Yeah, by saying that I believe that we are, inherently good, I mean to say that we're not stained by the actions of first man and first woman,
Yeah.
who disobeyed a rule that had been given to them in the Garden of Eden. So I certainly believe that humans have a great capacity for evil. I am aware of that, and however we fall short of the glory of our natures, however you want to describe that is okay with me. The traditional language is sin, and I think that the Jewish language for sin means more like missing the mark. So we're aiming for something, sometimes we miss the mark. I've been much more impressed with the human capacity for compassion and for goodness, for people helping in times of crisis, or when I've been a kind of a clueless traveler in another country and been taken in by people and fed by people who want to be helpful. I think most people, given the chance, will want to be helpful. And Nazism, I wouldn't say that was done in the name of religion. I think that's an oppressive political structure, and that's a whole different ballgame than human, nature and an individual human capacity. I guess we could make the entire thing about, how do we fall short of what may be a tremendously compassionate, glorious nature. I don't know the answer to that.
But the one other thing I would just say, but it's a good question I think for David too, is that I think that going back to what I was saying, I don't necessarily think that altruism or compassion or empathy necessarily come from religion, and I do think we often try to take credit for it. I do think we can be informed by it. I think it can be deepened by it.
By what?
By religion. By teachings of religion and how we understand. As you had said, it's one thing to have the capacity to do that. It's another thing to be active, and to feel the urge to do that, to be compelled to do that, and to say that this is a practice that is meaningful or moves forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does make sense. Would you also agree then that religion can also be used to really highlight that bad stuff?
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh yeah.
And go ahead, Craig.
So I just want a related topic, because David, earlier you were talking a lot about the rejection of miracles, and so
Yeah, okay.
And so I just want to, on this point, in regard to apathy and compassion, I do not entirely reject the notion that there is a miracle. As Lisa said, I'm still waiting for more information on that piece. But I can also, in our New Testament, read those miracle stories in a way that doesn't insert the supernatural. In many ways, Jesus of Nazareth is encountering people who are socially isolated and physically isolated, and has a capacity to create a space that unleashes for them a reconnection to community, and unleashes their own power to heal and to get reconnected with what one needs to live again. And so that's very powerful to me. Those stories, the miracle, the healing. What's that?
I'd call that miraculous.
Yeah. Well, the healing stories are just a really important social, political statement, as well as any kind of assertion of supernatural power.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that. I think you can look at the Bible and see some really beautiful messages, and you can also do that in the Quran, and you can do it in the Iliad and the Odyssey. You can look at any book, and if you can take the New Testament and take every word that Jesus ever said and absolutely fall in love with it and guide your life by it and be truly enriched by it. But if you don't believe Jesus was divine, you're an atheist. Or Unitarian. Well, Unitarians are atheists too. Apparently Unitarians are atheists too. So I want you to understand, because we're talking about altruism, I dwell on the concept of the supernatural for a very specific reason. There's a lot of books on one mythology or another. They're all the same to me. And you can find good lessons in all of them. But if you don't actually believe they're divine, if you don't actually believe in the divinity of Zeus, you don't believe in Zeus. If you don't believe in the divinity, you're an atheist. You can get great lessons from those books and still be an atheist.
Well, I want to jump in on behalf of stories. People here who know me know that I'm a storyteller and I love stories, and I think they're really powerful human teaching tools, and they cross cultures very easily. I think that we tell our children, especially our little girls, the story of Little Red Riding Hood, not because we really believe that talking wolves exist, but because we have to have a way to tell them that there are people who will hurt them and who will say, come a little closer. And if you trust that and don't trust your gut, you can get eaten up, metaphorically speaking.
Just real
Stories
quick.
are powerful.
Just real quick, and make sure that if you're talking into the mic, you're talking into the mic kind of closer like this. So it's soft like that. Your Jesus is better than my Jesus. I couldn't help it. All right, so moving on from that.
Did you see that altruism, folks? Did you see that?
All right, so moving on. Now, we kind of touched on this just now in how we deal with different experiences and how that involves our community and things like that. And Craig really mentioned a really great thing there, is when Jesus came out and he said those things to the poor people, when he immersed himself in those sinners and the sore, the sick, the people that were shunned, the lepers, and all of these, he was bringing that acceptance of that community to them. He was showing the Philistines, and he was showing the very strict, people who were very fundamental against him, that these people should be accepted for who they are because they are humans. So he was sharing that compassion with them, and he was bringing them in there. And now, what may have been turned into a mythological tale later on in the telling, the blind who was healed may have been healed because a doctor who normally wouldn't have seen him now would go help him and gave him the medicine he needed to get rid of the sores in his eyes. And that's those kind of things, those details that really throw atheists for a loop, because we're like, look, why isn't there a natural explanation for how that person was healed? And a lot of mythology glosses over that stuff and just says, God did it, Jesus did it, the divine did it. And so that's one of those things that we want to touch base with and start learning about. Now the next question is, and we're going to start with Gail this time, because, you know, Lisa was over here. I don't get to tell my story. No. How does an atheist, humanist, Christian, Islamic, Jewish person experience the aesthetic? How do you experience the beauty of the world? Where does that come from?
That's a nice difficult one, isn't it? So actually when I first saw that question, I was thinking of the ineffable, which is God. And there's a very famous Jewish writer, Abraham Joshua Heschel, who walked with Martin Luther King in Selma. And he talks about the beauty of not being able to describe. So there is a beauty in experiencing something internally and externally simultaneously. So I will leave it at that.
I can experience awe and wonder at the beauty of creation and don't posit a creative hand behind, you know, the rose that's opening up or something. And there's also beauty that's created by humans, and that's also incredibly wonderful and awe-inspiring to me. It's humbling to see what people can create in an artistic sense that communicates to us so much more directly sometimes than words do. And I'm in a job where words are very important. I thought that maybe the reason this question was included was because of the way that art has been used in religion, and I think that that's a place where Unitarian Universalists struggle sometimes, because we think that certain symbols are kind of broken for a lot of humans, and so we won't use them anymore, and we try to put up these new symbols, but people don't really get it, so we try to explain it without realizing that if we have to explain it, it's not working as a symbol. If it worked as a symbol, we would never have to explain it. So, you know, we're sometimes a little bit struggling with exactly how the aesthetic can communicate in ways that we can't always communicate in words. They say that Unitarian Universalists are really bad at hymn sings because we're always reading ahead to see if we agree with the words. There you have
I like that. So I agree with almost everything of what you just said, and I'm going to build on it. So as far as whether or not how an atheist looks at an aesthetic situation, just what she said. You certainly don't need any God to appreciate beauty. The comment that I want to make is that the question is in and of itself a bit malevolent. It betrays a malevolence. It betrays the same thing that I was showing you before, the allegation that you can't experience something that comes naturally without religion. If somebody said, it's exactly the same as, how can you be moral without religion? How can you be empathetic without religion? How can you be caring without religion? How can you experience beauty or understand beauty without religion? Because we're humans. But religion likes to take credit where it's not due. So that's why we get Oprah saying, well, if you're an atheist, you can't experience awe, which is a natural thing that all humans experience, because she has been brainwashed into thinking that awe comes from religion. The fact is that awe is very natural, beauty is very real, it's very subjective, and it has nothing to do with a man in the sky.
Well, I'll certainly agree with you that there's an inherent malevolence in the question.
Right, you see it, right? I mean, that's...
Yeah. So
It was on purpose.
I came tonight, every Wednesday night, we have a contemplative prayer circle, and what we do is first 20 minutes we sit in silence, and then the next 20 minutes we sit with some bit of poetry. Sometimes it's a psalm, sometimes it's Rumi, sometimes it's Tagore, sometimes it's Mary Oliver. And so what we do with that is we read it once, and then we ask, well, what is one word or phrase that's really compelling to you? And then we read it again, and the second question in the silence is, how does that touch my experience or my emotion? And then the last one is, what kind of response might I be invited to out of this experience with this bit of art? And for me, that is a core spiritual practice for me. And it doesn't have to be the sacred word as we often define it, but it elicits a response for me. It could be a moral response, it could be just a response of gratitude, it could be just shouting, yeah. And so in terms of the aesthetic, that's how it connects with my life of faith, I would say.
Let me just try this. I may retract it later.
Bipolar.
I think the human capacity for the aesthetic is a reflection of the divine. I think all creative energy comes from God. I do not. I agree with you that I think that religion has done a great disservice, and I don't think that's the source. But my spirituality is separate from my own religion, practice of it. So when I see all creative art, music, all forms of creativity that human beings participate in as spiritual practice.
Aesthetics. For me, I appreciate every day when I look at the things that God has created and helped influence us to be able to do. And I look at everything that everybody has done in the world and how we were influenced to do it. Faith, belief, that God helped us do these things. And that's what I believe. I have a strong feeling in that faith that we do these things because we're influenced positively by God. The beauty of the world, of everyone together around the world who's done these things. That's how I look at that. Very simple.
What about the bad stuff? What about the bad stuff? I mean,
You mean bad art?
No, malevolence. If we're talking about, if you're saying that God gives us the good, God gives us the art, God gives us our creativity, does He not also give us the evil, the greed, the hatred? And if not, where does that come from? And if that comes from someplace different, why do you suppose that God lets that happen?
Just to clarify that, diseases, bubonic plague, the things that people create in the science labs that causes harm, where do these come from?
It's man's creation.
That's man's creation.
Man's creation. Absolutely, I agree with you on that.
Well, to me, it goes back to the discussion that we had earlier. I mean, it's of human beings' capacity for evil, and that is there. I'm not worked out on all of that. My own sense about it is that we part of our in my own tradition, it's about reminding ourselves of our nature in God, but that we also are given a sense of choice about that. So and also not. Evil. One way of explaining, human evil is also about, misdirected intentions, misdirected good intentions, or whatever. I mean, and that doesn't explain it all. It certainly happened. Is a lot of it. So So again, I was thinking about the aesthetic, and even a artistic expression, though, even that I don't like, I still can see that as a creative source. To me, that's about. It's a reflection of the divine nature of creation. So,
I think that question really has to go hand in hand with how you've defined theism for us. You know, in terms of the traditional understanding of God then is God is omnipotent and all-powerful. And those are, a lot of those terms come from a philosophy that's disconnected really from the sacred text that I read every day.
Okay, that's fair. Let me clarify. Theism is the practice of a belief in God, in a God. I am not limiting myself to the Abrahamic faiths. Theism is just simply a belief in a God or gods. Right. That's the definition. That's why atheism is not against that, it's without that. Atheism, without that belief.
Right.
So when we look at the aesthetic from a non-theistic, an atheistic point of view, we can see that, you know, I can come back and say, well, yes, talent, artistic talent comes from the brain. Evil also comes from the brain. It's all very consistent. It's all very consistent. It's all very logical. It's all good. All the good stuff comes from the same place as all the bad stuff does, which is our mind combined with our experiences and our genetic tendencies. My problem is when theists put the good stuff in the hands of the God and the bad stuff in the hands of the man. That's the problem that I have, and that's what I'm hearing from you guys now, specifically from you two, that God, the creativity, the good stuff, the thing you like, that comes from God. But if I'd say, well, where's the hate come from? Where does the evil come from? You say that's man's creation. How do you know that? How do you tell the difference? What makes you think that God didn't give us the hate?
Yeah, well, I think I take your point well. I think one explanation would be that human capacity for evil comes from being disconnected from God. Now, how to be connected with God is a big question, because then, again, I'm not making a claim that human beings that don't believe in God or don't have a prescribed religious viewpoint of God are not and somehow connected with God. I think you can be connected with God and not know it. But that's one way of explaining it. Evil comes from being disconnected from our actual nature, which is in relationship with God. Does that make sense?
So you're defining evil essentially as a separation from God.
More choices.
Right.
People make choices.
That would
It's like we all have choices to follow whatever religion we like.
That's
It's
Paul.
choices.
That's Paul Tillich's definition for sin: separation from God. Right.
And when you say that, I'm just going to throw this out there as what I see. When you say that in a scientific mindset, what a person's evil nature is the chemicals in their brain not firing off correctly, and so therefore that's where you come up with sociopathic tendencies. You come up with psychopathy. Then you see also what David was saying is the experiences as well. Growing up in a horrible home, having a very poor community surrounding you, having those poor choices available as an easier alternative. These things are natural. There's necessarily no supernatural explanation needed for them. That's where a natural viewpoint from an atheistic standpoint makes more sense and answers to questions that we see.
Yeah. So let me go one step farther with the aesthetic question or the aesthetic point of view. If all creativity is coming from God, as I'm saying, that's all spiritual practice, regardless of whether one is recognizing it or naming it, that is its source. And being away from, the presence of God is a definition of sin, okay? Then really what I'm arguing here is that there's no such thing as atheism. Because even though atheists may believe that, I don't believe that they're living out of that necessarily. When I see altruism come out of you, David, I can see that. You see, God is working right through you, isn't it? And it's beautiful.
You hear the word games? You hear the word games? Well, yeah. I know you're being a little tongue-in-cheek right now.
I am being tongue-in-cheek, but I'm serious about that in my own sense of
I've
that.
gotten
I'm
that
talking
many
about human
times.
nature.
I've gotten that many times, that because I'm good, I must not be an atheist. Because I'm nice, because
Because you're human.
Because
That's
I'm
what I'm
human,
trying
I
to
must
say.
not be an atheist. You see how religion is actually foisted on people. That is, according to that definition, it's impossible to disagree with you. Okay? That's a great position to be in.
That's why I came here tonight.
All right, so that was a great discussion. All right, so we're going to move on to the next question. And how can the various groups, you know, everybody knows that the moderate voice is there. You know, whenever I looked at Ibrahim's website on for the Noor Center, across the top of it said, "We denounce the actions of the extremists who attacked Charlie Hebdo." I know I butchered that, that's fine, it's French. And that is beautiful to see. But the problem is how do we get the various groups to promote that quiet majority of moderates who abhor that violence? How do we get them into activism and coming against those vocal, extreme, minority radicals that are abusing whatever sense they are? Stalin did it for atheism. You know, a lot of people sit here and say Hitler did it. No, he didn't. He made his own Christianity, look at perfect Christianity. But how do we promote those people to be vocal and activist against that minority radical? And for the Christian people, that's the Tea Party guys. How do we get them to be vocal? Sorry, did I say that out loud? My bad. Anyways.
I'll start with that one. First, all the things that we've seen lately over the Charlie Hebdo situation, what's going on in Iraq, Afghanistan, these are terrible, terrible things. The only way we can fight that type of extremism or bring anything against it is for each one of us in here together, no matter what religion we are, to stand together and deal with this. That's what it took in World War II, World War I. It took more than one country to solve the problem. And it's going to take all of us in some way, not each of us individual here, but it's going to take all of us together to be able to end these extreme problems like this or address it. Can we stop it? I hope. And one thing that really hurts is to see what I saw today in the news, that headline with that individual with two people beside him whose life is in danger. How can that man call himself anyone of religion or doing anything like that in the name of religion? It's an animal. And we all have to get together to stop animals like that. That's what it's going to take. It's a very emotional point for me because I've seen the good in people, but we also see the bad. But that is something that, to be able to address that, we all together have to line together and be able to deal with that problem. We can't just be Muslims speaking out, and we do. And that's why I wrote that, what you saw at the Anur website. I wrote that from my heart. And we have to be together, Jews, Christians, all of us, to deal with this type of problem. And all of us have these different extremists. And we have to deal with these extremists together. That's very serious, but my thought on that.
By the way, I'd like to make a correction. Stalin didn't do it in the name of atheism, and I understand that, but it was promoted in the communist regime.
Yes.
I have critics who have my text number.
Yeah. Thank you, critics.
I totally agree with what I hear Ibrahim saying. I think that's really important, especially for people in the Christian tradition that need to be challenged with that. My own sense about, part of my own feeling of my own work is that this is really also an internal struggle for an individual community of faith. In my church, for instance, we are trying to figure out how to stand against oppression as we see it and where we see it, and so and trying to do that together. I'm fortunate to be, a pastor of a church that has such a unified body of community that can take a very controversial issue as we have with issues around our public statement on gay marriage. And so, and you know, we paid the price for that. We have other Christians coming to protest us. So, you know, but that is a way of kind of calling out, you know, discrimination as we see it, and I think we have to do that. It's not enough for us to do as individuals. I don't think there's any big answers to, you know, correct that whole issue. But you know, if we're not trying to do the internal work so that our communities can stand together on issues, then I think we're not doing our job. And I think if we're not getting our communities to stand with other communities, and that is doing the work of coalitions, as you know, Ibrahim has said, then you know, we're not doing it. But that's not, you know, we don't have a choice to do that. We have a battle in our country for the narrative about who gets to define the story. And I do think this is where I think David has really been helpful, because he's calling out us, you know, to some honest intellectual thinking here about what we claim and what we say and what is that we believe. And, you know, even if it's just about calling us back to the real truths that are present within our religious traditions, that's good, because we need that. You know, a friend of mine had said his mission statement in life was to bring others to Christ, beginning with himself, which I thought was pretty good. You know, in a sense that he didn't think that it was just about his perspective trying to impose on others. He said the work had to begin really with him. And I think in some ways it is about wrestling within our own communities about how to really call ourselves back to our best.
So I appreciate what you've both said. I think some of it boils just plain down to relationships. That as we get to know one another, we find some places where we can agree and where we can strive for something, maybe more productively than against something. You know, I'm more likely to show up somewhere if I'm in relationship with the person who's invited me to go. And I think that goes across the board for us, that especially people who are very different from me, as I've gotten to know them, I want to be there when they need to stand for something, or are threatened in some way by some extremists. So relationships, continuing to build relationships within our particular communities and between our sub-communities of the broader community is profoundly important.
First of all, thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate listening to everybody's different positions. However, I really like the last question, because that played into exactly what I stand for. And David, several months ago, I met him personally in Raleigh, and he was talking about, you know, being a radical atheist, and I was going like, oh, hell no. But then I started realizing I am a radical atheist. And for those who don't know me, my name is Stephen Hewitt, and I fought the fight in King, North Carolina, getting the Christian flag and the Christian cross off a Veterans Memorial. So my question is to this panel, where were you? You stand here and you talk about standing up and getting these Christian radicals in King, and I mean radicals in King, who have got death threats against me. I pack everywhere I go because they want to kill me, and I literally have that documented. We need to kill Steve Hewitt. Okay? They want to run me out of town. My question is, where were you when this has been going on for the last 4 years? Why didn't you speak up and stand up for Muslim veterans? Because I know you're a veteran.
I am.
Okay? The only people that were there was the UU. The UU was there, 50 of us, at the memorial when I put up the Buddhist flag. So when you talk about standing up and confronting radicals, we have radicals right in our own town, right in King, North Carolina, right here in Winston-Salem. So where were you? I was the only one standing there fighting this fight for 4 years and won it 2 weeks ago.
Well, yeah, I appreciate your question. It's a good agitational question and totally guilty. I wasn't there. I did have lots of conversations with members of my church who really were wanting to, who didn't understand what was going on and why that was such an important issue. So part of my work was internal, but I agree, you know, Steve, if you would have called me, I would have driven up there. So.
And Steve, I would have been there with you too, because I agree. I would have been right there beside you. Now you know where I'm at, I'll be there.
Thanks for the question, and thanks for your work on that issue. Yeah, I wasn't there. I think we have another issue in this county right now that I think I'm trying to be a little vocal about, and that's how the county commission meetings are being opened. And so I think we need to continue to work together to make sure that's the most inclusive policy, given the unfortunate Supreme Court ruling around Greece, New York. So I'm with you there.
And this brings to me, to mind for me, the importance of the separation of church and state. That's, I think, a foundational principle of American democracy, and something that sets our democracy apart is that fundamental principle that, you know, if you believe in the man in the sky or the woman in the tree or whatever, but don't make laws that impact me based on your religious beliefs. So.
So the question is, how can various groups promote the quiet majority of moderates into activism against the vocal minority radicals? I am a vocal minority radical, and I'm trying to get the moderates to come onto my side. So I'm going to just tackle this question from a different perspective. How do we raise the silent atheists and bring them up to be radical atheists like me? Radical atheists who champion absolute equality. Radical atheists who champion real science education. Radical atheists who demand truth and honesty and without hedging bets. Well, the way we do it is to underscore the fact that Christopher Hitchens was right. For that good people do good things and bad people do bad things, but for good people to do bad things, that requires religion. Okay? And if we look at if we look at bad people doing bad things in the name of religion, we have to confront that. We cannot throw up our hands and say, well, that's not religion, because it is. And we cannot throw up our hands and say, well, they're not the right religion, because they'll say that about everybody else. The Westboro Baptist Church, Osama bin Laden, ISIS, they all say that they're the true ones. Anders Breivik killed a bunch of people in Norway after writing a book on Jesus. He did it in the name of religion. Religion allows bad people to justify bad behavior, and it motivates otherwise good people to do bad things. It doesn't do it to everybody. There's a lot of variables involved. But we must identify the culprit is the lie that God is up there and wants you to do this thing. The reality is that if we took a more rational view of the world, we would have much less strife in this world. And that yields lives, that yields health, that yields longevity, that yields harmony. That's what we're all looking for. The culprit is religion. And what we have to do is stop coddling it out of political correctness.
Well, let me say, I actually disagree with David Silverman on this one, because I would say that the culprit is dogmatism, wherever we find it. And when people are insisting that they are right, and if you are not in agreement with me, you either don't have all the information and let me teach you, or you're somehow misguided, or you might be evil. You know, that's a dogmatic point of view. And I think that when I read the question about how moderates should motivate people against the fundamentalists, I can't remember, against was the word that jumped out at me, and I thought, that's part of the problem, the quiet majority of moderates into activism against the vocal minority radicals. Frankly, I think that what we should be active against are things like climate change, things like racism, things that threaten us as a species. I think about the movie Independence Day when aliens were coming not for Americans and not for atheists and not for Christians, but for humanity. And it took all humans to muster a defense for the planet. I think we're in a similar situation. There's incredible urgency to some human peril that we're facing. And if we can't find ways to work together with the radicals on the left and the right, I think of Rick Warren, who wrote The Purpose-Driven Life, and he's very much of the belief in the right to life. But he works with feminists who, with him, oppose sexual exploitation of women. And he says, I don't care that they're really active in reproductive freedom movements. That's not the issue with me. When we're working against sexual exploitation of women, we're on the same side. So we're going to work together. And I think we three are involved in a coalition of religious congregations that have lots of different attitudes and beliefs and some different values. But I think we're finding the places where we agree and can work together and be active together. And that's what it's all about.
Okay, well, I disagree with you. I think that if there was no religion, there would still be strife, and because I think one of the culprits is power. And that there are people who want power, and they will use what is at their discretion. And since a lot of people believe in their religion, they use things out of context to be powerful over other people. And one of the things that that I was thinking about with our last question about good and evil, I guess, is I was thinking a lot of the story of Abraham with Sodom and Gomorrah, when God wanted to destroy the people, and Abraham said, hey, if there's 50 good people, don't do it. Argued and challenged God. A lot of times we're afraid, and I think that this brings up that we're kind of challenging each other, and that I don't think there is anything that we can do to make people, to have moderates, if you want to put it that way, speak up. I think that it goes back to the idea of action. It goes back to the idea of, I think about the Holocaust. There were a lot of really good people who helped a lot of people out of, who went against the power and risked their own lives. And if I were in an area where ISIS is, I'd be really scared to challenge. And so I think that power is the motivating force even more than religion.
I just want to say I agree with that. So I do agree with that. Yeah, it's all about power and greed. Religion is a tool, okay, but it's too broad of a tool. It's so broad that it can be used for anything. And that's why it's a culprit. It is not the only culprit. It is not the source of evil. The source of evil, the root of evil is power and greed, which is pretty much the same thing. I'm just saying that power and greed use government and religion to enforce whatever it wants, which is, I think, exactly what you were saying. So I think we're in complete agreement there. I just wanted to clarify
We're
myself.
agreeing.
Yeah, well, they haven't spoken yet over there.
So just two quick things to add here. You know, as we've been talking, I wonder if you might have to include basing a value system on the laws of physics also in the category of religion.
Why?
Well, I mean, I certainly think a lot about the second law of thermodynamics. We're moving to a greater degree of chaos. But I'm still waiting for these physicists to discover a whole different sense of order behind that chaos. So there's still more stuff being revealed all of the time around the laws of physics that, you know, we have to remain open to the possibility that all of that is going to change.
You're
So-
about to stir up a huge hornet nest.
You've just made me very angry.
I heard murmurs out there.
The other quick thing, though, in terms of our response is, I think we cannot discount mental health issues, which is a very relevant topic to North Carolina right now, because religious extremists are counting on putting out a message, even on the internet, to grab hold of somebody who is very, very vulnerable. And so if we want to really combat this issue together, we need to stand together for adequate mental health services across our human communities.
I'll just answer real quickly. First of all, on the second part, I can't agree with you enough. You're completely right. The only thing that I'd like to caution you about is using words correctly. Religion, I don't mean to put you down. I'm just saying that what you just said is part of our problem. Because you're using words incorrectly, and that's how communications break down. The laws of physics and mathematics, which govern the universe, have nothing to do with a god or gods. Therefore, it's not theism. Therefore, it's not religion. Period. It is simple cause and effect. If I drop this, it goes down. That's not religion. That's just experience-based knowledge. And that's got to be separated out from religion because it is the exact opposite of religion.
Science also has assumptions. For a long time, there was no zero.
Yeah.
There was 1, 2, 3, and so there were no zeros. So a lot of scientific methods start from an assumption point. So for a lot of people, that is a belief system, which is a religion.
No,
I think that's...
it is a belief system. It is not a religion. When there's no God involved, it's not a religion. It's a set of knowledge. It's the set of knowledge that we have. And we do not know everything. Like I said when we first started out, we have a set of knowledge that we say what we know, a set of facts. And if new facts come in, we change what we know. But we don't say we don't know something, therefore a man in the sky. Okay, that is religion.
Well,
We don't say that.
That is correct, but science and religion are not incompatible.
They're totally incompatible.
No, I
100%. Totally incompatible.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
When,
It's not part of my belief system.
right. Part of the working together with four-star theory critical thinking is working on critical thinking skills and rational thought and really delving into those very hard, difficult questions. And since I became president, I've seen so many different people coming together and discussing that and learning to understand how important that critical thinking skills is. When you do critically think and you use the scientific method against a lot of the claims that religion makes, you do start to see a very hard line between what is the natural world and what is considered the supernatural world. And a lot of the things that happen as far as that is concerned is you start to see that people who become more secular in their thought process, more moderate in their thought process, are critically thinking about those supernatural things and starting to move more towards the secular side of the equation versus the fundamental side of the equation. All right, we're going to wrap up, and because we are actually way past our time with closing remarks from each one of the panelists, We'd like to start with Gail, please. Just closing remarks about, what your experience and what you'd like the people to come away with.
So I am open to discussion anytime. Come and visit me, email me, talk with me. I love the conversation, and I thank you all for being here.
Gail's invitation to having continuing dialogue and not just about this belief or unbelief thing, but about the issues of the day. I'm interested in hearing from people, and I'm really appreciative that so many people came out. Wish we had a room twice as big, maybe next time.
So I want to thank you all for coming. Did you all have fun? So I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank Sincere and Shane for organizing this. And I want to encourage you all to donate to Brenner's Children's Hospital. We're real close to the goal. I'd also like to attract your attention to the membership brochures for American Atheists that I left outside. My parting shot, because I always have to have a parting shot, is Leviticus 20:13, which entails God talking to Moses on top of Mount Sinai. He says, "If a man lay with a man as he lay with a woman, he has committed an abomination. He shall be stoned to death by the congregation, and his blood is on his own hands." Cafeteria religion is constant, not rampant, constant. Every single theist practices cafeteria religion. If you can look at a sentence and say, where God is talking to Moses, and take the first half of that sentence and take it seriously, and ignore the second half of that sentence and not murder people, you're making cafeteria religion, which means it's all subjective, which is exactly what you were saying. However, the problem is when people start viewing their objective choices as objectively true. And that is the problem with ISIS. They look at a broad text and they interpret it to where they want it to be, and then they call it the objective truth. That is the problem, and
They are so wrong.
Yes, according
They
to
are
them.
absolutely wrong.
I get you. But they say they are so right, and you are the one who's so wrong, and that's the danger. And this is why we have to look past the labels. Okay, this is why we have to look past the labels. Because a person who calls himself a Christian, a person who calls himself a Muslim, a person who calls himself a Jew is not enough of a descriptor. You need much more information in order to judge people. I think I'll close on that. Good. Thank you.
Right.
I'm going to leave it alone.
Thank you. We can't stay that much later.
Thanks for inviting me. David, you're not evil.
Thank you.
And I have one suit that
Neither
fits.
are you.
I have no need in my bones to defend religion. But the evangelist in me has a need to help people find a pathway to a religious experience. What I love about our conversation is that we're trying to practice some intellectual honesty, some real authentic way of trying to describe what our experiences are. And I think we have to, the truth claims and the objective truth claims are outrageous, and I think that we often are perpetrators of that in the religious faith. But I think that there's, not all truth is simply scientific and rational. Some truth comes in other ways, whether it's metaphoric and allegoric, and that has a power, and it has a power to change people's lives. I can name you 10 miracles. Mike, Sissy, Shirley, people whose lives were on a trajectory, and because of what they came from, were bound to die and to live very meaningless lives. But because of religious experiences, they changed. Plus, because they were nurtured in a place of religion that was not condemning and not making objective claims. So I'm trying to say that is that is very much, I think, I totally agree and critical of our own religious perspectives, but I also think that there's a difference between what is to be at the heart of our religions and our spirituality. And that is the thing, I think that there is a power there that really can transform and change people's lives. So, thank you for having me speak here.
I thank everyone for having me here as well. This has been a great experience for me, and one of the things I've enjoyed doing while I'm at Anur is being part of the Interfaith and making it better, because I want our group to know more of everyone, not just Islam, to study Christianity, to study Judaism, to study everyone, whether they have religion or not, even atheists. And I get along with everyone, believe me, I do. Because everybody has something. And this has been a great experience for me all my life. I've lived all over the world. I've been very fortunate to do that. And I've been around many cultures, some with religion, some without. And I have absolutely no problem with that. I've learned from them. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned of the religion that I have. I've learned of a lot of things that some people may say, are you an atheist? But I believe that everyone has their own. And I enjoy the conversations that I have with people. And I want to hear more from you. So that's why please ask me questions. Get a hold of me. I'd be glad to talk with you. I truly enjoy this very much. I wish we had more time. Thank you.
All right. I want to tell everybody thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming and being a part of this and being so respectful as we have these discussions. I want to thank Humanism with Heart for co-sponsoring this event. Without Eric and Lisa's help, we wouldn't have been able to pull all this off. I want to thank each and every one of the members of the board for FACT for being, just letting me brainstorm and keeping me in check and saying, hey, that's not that good idea, text me and telling me that Stalin didn't do it for atheism. I just want to thank everybody who does that kind of stuff for me, because my filter broke a long time ago. I want to thank Jeremy Cleese especially for helping me get everybody, together and helping me network. I'm fairly new to this interfaith thing. And so I would really like to start actually keeping in contact. I would like to have y'all's contact information. I want to put it into an interfaith communique on our webpage and be able to have people who are interested just to be able to get in contact with everybody, including an American Atheist sign-up form as well. You can find us at www.facriticalthinker.org. Plug. Okay, so I want to thank David Silverman for making the time to actually come out, Lisa for being so awesome and helping with this, Gail for stepping in last minute, and Ibrahim as well for stepping in, Kelly for actually helping me kind of understand, how important a panel discussion would be and how important the dialogue would be, and Craig for being last minute because he turned me down at first because I said it was going to be a debate, and he's like, no. And then I said, panel discussion. He said, I heard, that's fine. We can do that. So I want to thank him for that. And then he came here and started the debate. And I was like, what? How did you turn? No, I was like, I want to especially thank Jane Elliott, and I want to bring this up in final closing. Gene Elliott is, Hickory Humanist president. We are doing ReasonCon April 25th. Correct? Yeah, April 25th in Hickory, North Carolina. I want to invite everybody to go to reasonnc.com and get your tickets and go and get the awesome deals that they have. You only have a couple of days left. So thank you for spending all your money on my donations.
Shane.
Not go spend all your money on theirs.
Shane,
Go ahead.
thank you for organizing this and running this and making this charity event.
Thank everybody. But also I want to thank Jim and Kathy of Community Arts Cafe for letting all us heathens get up in here. And like I said, I'll have all these contact information, and if you do have an issue and you do want to reach out and you do want to be a part of doing an interfaith thing, we will start doing a lot more things. Also, last thing, David Smalley will be here April 21st or 22nd. We haven't ironed that out. And he will be doing a presentation. You can find that on Eventbrite, the same place you found here. Just Google David Smalley in Winston-Salem. So he'll be also at ReasonCon. Just plugging again, ReasonCon. Go there. Okay, last and finally, I'm sorry. We did make our $2,000 mark, so please give yourself a round of applause. So, thank y'all, and the volunteers who are going to help put everything up. Please come up front whenever you get done.